Our next Ignite talk is going to be by Laura Perel. Laura serves as the Executive Director of the 4D program at the University of Denver and provides strategic leadership for the development and operationalization of the university-wide 4D model and experience centered on holistic learning and development. Dr. Perel brings to this role deep experience designing and overseeing high-impact co-curricular programs. Previously, she served as Associate Director of the Center for Research and Fellowships at Georgetown University, where she guided undergraduate students, graduate students, and alumni in reflecting on and integrating their learning, deepening their experience, and telling their stories. Prior to Georgetown, she worked as an associate with the Office of National Fellowships and the Hamel Center for Undergraduate Research at the University of New Hampshire. She holds a PhD and AM in history from Brown University, where she was a Peter Green Doctoral Scholar and Brown Wheaton Faculty Fellow. She has participated in special institutes through the National Endowment for the Humanities and the Folger Shakespeare Library. Laura.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with my fellow Transformers. I've been joking that should be our new groupie name, and I really like it. As I begin my talk, I really wanted to ground us in what do we know about postgraduate success and well-being. Well, we know from Gallup that certain types of experiential learning opportunities and mentorship and support experiences are correlated with a higher sense of purpose and well-being when students graduate. We also know that employers have identified a certain set of mindsets, skills, and experiences that they say are more likely to allow them to hire a candidate and make them more successful in the workplace. Also, the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs report has identified the skills that are critical for the fastest growing occupations, like curiosity and lifelong learning, resilience, agility, social influence. We also know from things like the Elon poll that graduates who've had certain types of mentorship and support experiences are more likely to say that their education was very rewarding and worth the cost. And in light of the national debates about the value of higher education, I think that this type of data really invites us to consider how are we designing an education that better supports our students. So for us at the University of Denver, we have several animating questions that are animating the work that we do. The first one is, what does it look like to backward design a transformational education using these evidence-based strategies? And taking these questions from this recent white paper on reawakening joy, I really like that phrasing, how can we answer the following questions? What educational experiences do we believe that all students deserve, not just the ones with the most cultural capital? And what institutional changes at the university level are needed to realize these commitments to our students? So at the University of Denver, the four-dimensional or 4D experience is our institutional response. So the purpose of 4D is to really prepare our students for lifelong learning, engagement, and thriving through empowering their growth across these four dimensions. So intellect, character, well-being, and purpose. And that's both in and out of the classroom. So for us, this is really a longitudinal vision of student success that considers issues of persistence and retention, but goes far beyond it and thinks about how are we preparing our students for life. So we have these four dimensions, and I will say these dimensions bleed over into one another, but first with intellect, we're thinking about how do we deepen our students' intellect? How are we encouraging them to pursue their curiosity, explore big questions from different vantage points, navigate ambiguity? We have something like debate across the curriculum, which works with faculty across disciplines to think about how are students reframing assumptions and exploring issues from new ways. With designing careers and lives of purpose, we're thinking about how are we helping students set and chart goals, connect the dots, apply their skills and talents in service of some greater good, and learn how to tell their story. I will say, I know there's life design panel later. Some of life design is infused into this. With discovering character, we're thinking about how are we helping our students embrace compassion and empathy. So we have a compassion lab, thinking about how are we helping students develop compassion skills. We're thinking about how are we helping our students practice resilience and courage, utilize ethical decision-making, and engage across difference. And then finally, with well-being, we know this is a huge one because we've asked students, what do you need? And they say, give yourself grace. The importance of navigating failure is really important to them, and not being hard on themselves. How are they embracing healthy behaviors and decisions, and cultivating positive relationships? So there are three drivers that we believe facilitate engagement with the four dimensions and create this larger 4D ecosystem. The first is experiences. So with this, we're thinking about how are we fostering learning environments in and out of the classroom that are empowering students to grow across the four dimensions. And we're also thinking about, even to Lehigh, the high impact practices, how are we helping students pursue and participate in high impact practices, but also take advantage in our signature experiences like our new immersive weekend at our mountain campus. With mentorship, to borrow Peter Felton's and Leo Lambert's phrase, how are we helping our students develop a relationship-rich education, knowing, as Michael talked about, the importance of those kinds of relationships, both peer relationships, faculty and staff relationships, and how are we helping our students grow a mentorship constellation? So how we think about this is when they arrive on campus, we have people that we tell them, these are your people. You have a first-year seminar faculty mentor, you have a 4D peer mentor, you have an academic advisor, and you're a career advisor. And as you go through your educational experience, we are going to invite you to think about who do you add to your constellation as you go through, according to your interests and goals. And then finally, with reflection, I think this is absolutely critical, and this is something, Michael, you were talking about too. How are we embedding reflection to the student experience to constantly invite students to think about questions like, why are you here? What are you doing? And this is infused both from mentors and advisors engaging students in these kinds of questions. So we have a reflective supervision model in student employment for this, but we also have a reflective on-ramp, and we're thinking about what are the reflective touch points at which we're constantly engaging students in these questions and supporting deeper life interactions. But I want to talk about how did I come to this work? What was my aha moment? So before I came to DU, for a number of years, I advised students on competitive national and international fellowships. So Rhodes, Marshall Scholarship, Fulbright, Truman. You think about those kinds of fellowships. And if you're not already friends with people who work in fellowships advising on your campus, I would encourage you to make those friends. Because the thing about fellowships is that you are working with students over many months on an intensely reflective and highly mentored experience where you are inviting them to think about these deeper questions. What is the through line in your education? How are you connecting the dots between what you're doing in the classroom and what you're doing out of it? How do you think about applying your education in service of some greater good, whatever that might look like? That may be working in AI, climate change, community engagement, any of those types of topics. And I was working with a student a number of years ago now who was a junior who had just gone through the Udall scholarship process, who was interested in environmental policy. And in the debrief with her, after working with her weekly for about 4 months, every week, and meeting with her to think about her application, we did a debrief, and she said, you know, the only reason I have clarity about my education is I went through this process. Now that stuck with me, because this was a rising senior at a very prestigious institution who we would like to think, I think, that our students are regularly having opportunities to think about these questions. And this encapsulated something that I've been observing over the institutions that I've been at. The idea that we want to think that our students are connecting the dots regularly, are thinking about these connections in and out of the classroom. But the reality is many students are not having those kinds of opportunities. And so for me, this is what led me to DU, to think about these kinds of issues on a macro level. Think about how are we creating an ecosystem, a reflective arc across the student's experience that's inviting them to think about these kinds of questions. And so central to that work has been engaging students, asking them, what are your aha moments? When did you feel like something was activated in you, or when you felt energized about what you were learning? And our students have told us things that actually Michael brought up earlier, which is that they felt activated when they were encouraged to think about why they were there and what their education was for. And so I just pulled two of those interviews that we did with students. So one student said, in my very first year seminar, I was invited to think about what is education? Why are you here? And it caused this person to think more deeply about why they were in college and what they were using it for. Another student said issues of identity and education were absolutely critical to their sense of purpose and connection and clarity at DU. Who are you? What kind of steps do you need to take to realize your goals? And so as we've been building out these reflective touch points over students' experience, we've asked them, what is most meaningful to you? Reflect back to us what you think you were gaining, or what kind of clarity that you're gaining. And they've told us. They said, 4D means that college is about getting more than a degree, that it's about challenge, it's about connections, it's about growth. It's not a set path. You don't have to follow the path that everyone else does. It's okay to deviate. It's okay to fail and learn. Other students have said the same thing. It means growth and reflection. It means taking what you know about yourself and applying it to the next stage of college and beyond. And it means don't just stay between the lines. I really like that. How are we not just going through the motions of education, but actually really living into it? And what's been interesting is a couple years ago, we did a 2-day immersive weekend with over 100 of our peer leaders and mentors. And we asked them, go to the corner of the room, and each of the corners of the room represented one of the 4 dimensions. We said, go to the corner of the room that is what drew you to college, or what you thought was most important coming to college. And most of them wandered over to the intellectual growth, intellect corner. And then we said to a group of mostly juniors and sophomores, now go to the corner of the room that's most important to you at this moment in time. And where do you think they went? They went to purpose. They went to purpose because they're interested in that issue of clarity, that issue of why am I here and what am I doing with my life. And what's interesting is in the process of doing this work with faculty and staff, bringing faculty and staff from all of our divisions, colleges, and schools together to engage in this collaborative problem solving and dialogue around how are we better serving our students and building out this purposeful arc for students, the faculty and staff had told us that really it was creating a 4D experience for them. And so we have a 4D design series that uses design thinking to think about how do we embrace strategies, mindsets, and tools to design for purpose, design for belonging, design for well-being, design for curiosity, compassion, courage. We have infusion grants that give people seed funding to try one new thing in their pedagogy and practice. We have a university-wide symposium that brings faculty and staff together and students to really talk about these themes. And faculty have told us that what's been most meaningful is that this work is creating a community cognizant of these issues rather than an individual burden to be in charge of student success. And I think that probably resonates with many of you in this time of burnout, feeling like I can't be connected. How are we helping people understand they have an ecosystem of support too? I love this one. This insight about coming together to engage in this work collaboratively has created a power of connection, a sense of a world of purpose for themselves. That they've gained a sense of the profound value of interdisciplinary teams creating together. And it's been a reminder of the innovation and differential risk-taking that comes when you come together to really engage in these kinds of issues. Now, Erin and I will be at the poster session, so I encourage you to come talk to us about the work that we've been doing. But I want to give you another example of how we've been taking the conceptual and making it practical for students. So one thing we've done is we did a research study with our first-year students to engage them in questions of what could better support you and enable you to really lean into your college experience. And from that research, we've created a digital experience that is organized according to reflective questions at a student's developmental moment in college. So what a first-year is seeing is very different than what a junior student is seeing. And ask them things like, how are you engaging in your community? How are you reconnecting with people that are important to you after study abroad? And then it organizes activities, resources, opportunities that relate to that kind of theme, and also enables them to select customized pathways that interest them from our high-impact practices. So really trying to help students design a college path that is meaningful, that gives them that sense of connection and purpose throughout their educational experience. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Laura.